Well, good day, and welcome to Lesson 21 in our study of the book of Mark. Today we're going to finish chapter 6. And this part of the chapter is in succession to a long previous part that we've done in the first part of the chapter 6 in the previous few lessons. And it's a continuation of what Jesus did in those lessons. If you recall, Jesus was beset by a lot of people who came to hear him, so much so that he had to talk to them from a boat from the shore because there were so many people who came to see him. And as I said back previously, they got into a boat after this and left to go across the sea, a distance of about 4 to 5 miles, so they would get some rest. However, when they came to this area, there were so many people there waiting for him that he preached and he taught and he healed again. And this was where the people came to the degree that there were at least 5,000 men, according to one of the Gospels. But this only includes the men, not the women and the children. So this miracle of him feeding the 5,000 really referred to the men and not to the whole congregation of people. It is estimated that in this area that there were probably somewhere between 15 and 20,000 people altogether. So this is the miracle of Jesus feeding the 5,000, which really is many more than that, and of him being there for these people for this time, feeding them from 2 small fish and 5 small barley loaves. This was the miracle of the feeding of the 5,000. Now it says, as just when this was over, when this was finished, it says, immediately he made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, to Bethsaida. Now, where they were at this time was in a plain, in an area just outside this town of Bethsaida. And when this miracle was over, he immediately ordered them. He made his disciples. He didn't ask them to go. He ordered them to go, get in the boat, and leave. Why was this? It says over in the Gospel of John, if you go there, because in order to understand this, you really have to look at the Gospels of Matthew and of John as well. It says that when they had this miracle, when all these people were fed and were satisfied, they came upon Jesus, that they perceived, Jesus perceived, as it says in verse 15 of chapter 6 in John, Jesus perceived that they were about to come and take him by force to make him king. So he departed again to the mountains by himself alone. So you have this large crowd of people who now were determined that they were going to make Jesus their leader, their king. Probably because they thought with all his powers he could easily overthrow the Roman legions. Besides, these people now saw that this was a man who could heal the sick, could cast out demons, who could do all sorts of miracles, and in addition could create food out of nothing. So they figured that they could have it made with him as their leader. They could have it made. They'd no longer have to worry about food. They'd no longer have to worry about sickness. They'd no longer have to worry about demons with Jesus as their leader. So they came to make him, they were going to take him by force and make him king. So, and it's believed that the disciples were probably caught up in this same euphoria. So therefore, he made the disciples, and the word used for made or commanded is quite forceful. He made the disciples go into the boat and go before him to the other side, to Bethsaida. Now this plain was on the side of nearby to Bethsaida. One gospel says he made them to go towards Capernaum, but Bethsaida was between where they were at the time for the feeding and Capernaum, so it was both in the same direction. And it was only a distance of 4 to 5 miles from Capernaum to where they were, according to what we heard before. Therefore, it says, he sent them a multitude away, which must have been somewhat difficult to send all these people away who were so euphoric and so bound up with making him king. But he did manage to send them away. He sent the disciples in the boat, and he himself went up to the mountain to pray. Now, one commentator asked the question as to what he prayed for. And it's believed that he actually prayed for the disciples. He prayed for the disciples because they were obviously not in tune with what he was trying to do. They were not really aware of what he was trying to make them understand. They were still caught up in the miracles and in the excitement of it all. So he told them to go in the boat. He sent the people away, and he went up in the mountains to pray, presumably for the disciples and for others. Now, when he departed in the mountains, this was early evening. And it says, when evening came, the boat was in the middle of the sea, and he was alone on the land. So we don't know what time they went out to sea in the boat. But he was on the land, they were in the boat, and they were on the boat when evening came. So when it got dark, he was in the boat. Now they were in the boat, and he was alone on the land. And he saw them straining at rowing, for the wind was against them. So they were obviously caught up in another storm, and they were not making the headway rowing as they should. When you go to the other Gospels, it says that they were quite a piece out to sea, up to 3 to 4 miles out to sea. Now, they were supposed to be going in a dry line along the shore towards Bethsaida, but the wind had obviously carried them out to sea, and they were not in a good position. It says, he saw them straining and rowing, for the wind was against them. Now the evening came, the boat was in the middle of the sea. Now about the 4th watch of the night, he came to them. Now the 4th watch would be between 3 and 6 o'clock in the morning. Now if they went to sea when evening came, this means they were probably out in the water anywhere between 8 and 9 hours. And they would be getting pretty desperate by this time. There's a number of miracles which occur in this story which are not usually referred to. One of them is the fact that Jesus saw them rowing. They were 3 to 4 miles out to sea in a stormy night with waves on the water, and yet Jesus saw them from where he was on the land, which indicates that he can see us at any time as well. It would be absolutely impossible for an ordinary person to see someone at sea in a rowboat that distance away, clear enough to see what they were doing. But Jesus did. And therefore it indicates that he can also see us when we're far away, or seem to be far away from him as well. So he saw them straining at rowing, for the wind was against them. And about the 4th watch of the night he came to them walking on the sea, and would have passed them by, which really means he would have gone by their side. He would have come right up to their side, but he was walking on the sea, and when they saw him walking, they supposed it was a ghost and cried out, for they all saw him and were troubled. Now, the other Gospels say they were frightened and they screamed. There was an element here which we have to sort of put ourselves in that position. These people were out there for a long time. in the middle of the water. It was a storm. They were making no headway. They were being blown farther from land. They were in deep trouble. And they were frightened. These were, to the most part, seasoned fishermen. They knew the Sea of Galilee. They knew the storms. They knew what the boats could do. But yet they were troubled. They were troubled because of their situation. They were troubled because Jesus was not with them as he had been in the previous storm when they went from Capernaum to Bethsaida. So they were alone. Jesus was on land, and now they saw someone coming towards them on the water, and they thought he was a ghost, a phantom. And in those days, it was believed that when people saw such a phantom on the water, it was a very bad omen and a very serious situation. They saw this ghost walking on the water and cried out. They were all troubled. These were all the disciples that had been with Jesus, who had seen his miracles, who had seen what he had done before, but yet they cried out. And Jesus walked with them and said, "Be of good cheer. Do not fear. It is I." So Jesus came walking on the water to them. And it says in John, it was already dark and Jesus had not come to them. The sea arose because a great wind was blowing, so when they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the sea and drawing near the boat, and they were afraid. But he said to them, "Do not be afraid, it is I." Matthew gives it a little bit further. He said, "Immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, 'Be of good cheer, it is I, do not be afraid.' Now Peter answered him and said, 'Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water.'" See, they still were not too sure who this was. If Peter was willing to take the risk, maybe he was more afraid of drowning in the boat than of trying to walk with Jesus. We don't really know. But in any case, he's the one that left the boat and tried to walk in water, and Jesus had come. And when Peter had come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But then his focus went to the wind and to the storm, rather than keeping his eye on Jesus, and he started to sink. He was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." You see, often when we take our eyes off Christ, this is when troubles really expound and increase. It's much easier and much better for us to keep our eyes on the Lord. So when Peter was doing this, he apparently was okay. But when he took his eyes off Christ, he began to flounder and to sink. Now this is not mentioned in Mark, but it's mentioned in Matthew. So Jesus went into the boat, and the wind ceased, and they were greatly amazed in themselves beyond measure and marveled. For this is where it says, "For they had not understood about the loaves, because their hearts were hardened against Christ." Their hearts were hardened against miracles. Their hearts were hardened against what Christ was doing. They did not understand, even though they saw the miracle, even so they saw what had happened, they did not really appreciate and fully understand the situation. They had not understood about the loaves. And it says, when they had crossed over, they came to the land of Gennesaret and anchored there. And when they came out of the boat, immediately the people recognized him again and ran through the whole surrounding region and began to carry about on beds those who were sick to wherever they heard he was. Wherever he entered, They tried to follow him that they might see him, touch his garment, talk to him, and as many as who touched him were made well. In the Gospel of John, there's another miracle, because it says after Jesus came into the boat, then they willingly received him into the boat. This is verse 21 of chapter 6. And immediately the boat was at the land where they were going. There was no distance, no time. There was no difficulty in making this landfall. Immediately the boat came to the land. So there's a number of miracles here. There's a number of different aspects to this story which we often do not hear about. There certainly is the aspect of these people trying to force Jesus to be their king after they fed them with the loaves, and of them having to leave the area rather quickly. There's a miracle of Jesus interceding for them as he went to the mountains to pray while the rest were in the boat. There's a miracle of him being able to see them, what they were doing and the trouble they were in from afar off, even in the midst of a storm with wind and water. There's a miracle of him walking on water, as we often hear about before, and the miracle of him being right to land immediately after he went into the boat. There's a number of areas of this story which are not often referred to, but we have to realize that these people, having seen the miracles that Jesus did, still did not understand it, still did not understand what really was going on until Jesus came to them on the water. All the miracles that he had done before, they really did not accept and understand who he really was. And it says in Matthew 14, starting at verse 34, when they had crossed over, they came to the land of Gennesaret, which was right next to Capernaum. And when the men of that place recognized him, they sent out into all the surrounding region, brought to him all who were sick, begged him that they might only touch the hem of his garment, and as many as touched it were made perfectly well. But the big thing is, those who were in the boat, when Jesus got to them, got into the boat, those who were in the boat came and worshipped him, saying, truly, you are the Son of God. This is the first time that they actually worshipped him as the Son of God. It takes a lot to convince people sometimes of what really the situation is. And there's no difference today. People still, having seen all sorts of miracles, having experienced all sorts of benefits, having experienced all sorts of great things, still refuse to accept the fact that Christ is the Son of God. This is the end of chapter 6, and we'll get on to chapter 7 probably next week. Thanks again for watching. I hope this has been of some interest to you. I hope to see you again next week. Bye for now.